Ayo, what's up everybody? I just finished Wuthering Waves Acts 5 and 6. If this was X-Men, Cristoforo is a whole dang Omega level mutant. My man out here straight warping realities. I'm sure there has to be some limit to his powers, but from what we've seen so far, dang, my man is OP.
We must stay focused, brothers.
So Chapter 2, Act 5 gives us tons of questions to ponder over. But as they say, hindsight is 20/20, baby. So with the knowledge presented in Act 6, we'll be going back through to recap Act 5. Before, please don't forget to like and share. It really helps this channel and it helps these videos get out and get seen. Also, just so you know, we won't be going too deep into Act 6 because I feel like it might make things a bit more confusing. Anyways, let's get it. Okay, so Act 5 starts off with us saying we experience some kind of strong energy fluctuation coming from Cartathea's realm, the inverted tower. We realize that her frequency is unstable, so we decided to go check on her, and when we get there, we find that there's resonance energy discharge everywhere. So anyway, we can't find her anywhere. We try calling her, but there's no answer. We can only sense her residual frequencies. Together with Abby, we trace these frequencies back to the archipelago across from Ragunna, aka Septimont. With the Thermodian's will supposedly gone, we surmise that Cardi wouldn't just lose contact with us unless something was wrong. Like, really wrong, because we got a super good connection. So before heading off to Septimont, we hit up Cantarella to check in. When she answers the phone, she asks us if we missed the serenity of her castle, and we tell her what happened. And she's like, oh dang, Cartathea is missing. So she asks what can she do to help, and we ask her what kind of place is Septimont, and she can tell we're in a hurry, so she gives us the short and sweet. Septimont is another city-state within Renacita. Like the Regonese, its people were guided by the Sentinel across seas to settle there. However, the Septimontians don't believe in the Sentinel, but rather cast their faith into their warriors. She goes on to let us know that Septimont is a city of warriors, and they hold the motto, all for glory, fear no death. While Ragunna enforces strict border controls for Septimontians, and apparently for Outlanders, especially if you remember our introduction to the city. They aren't too hospitable, especially when it comes to matters of echo terminals. However, the Septimontians don't trip. They have a more accepting attitude towards Outlanders and terminal-housed echoes. Lastly, we discovered that it's a perfect time to visit, because now Septimont is hosting their Great Aegon, an event that attracts visitors far and wide. We thank Cantarella and prepare to set out, and she reminds us that we are the Phassalia's eternal ally, so there's no need for thanks or formalities. After our call, we hop on a wingray and finally set out to Septimont. Randomly, Abby says his heart is racing and he feels uneasy all of a sudden. And we ask Abby if he senses danger in Septimont, but Abby says that's not it. He just feels strange, like things are all tangled up. And that phrase is an important one to remember. Things are all tangled up. Anyways, when we arrive in Septimont, we try to summon Abby to see how he's feeling now. But there's no response. We question if Abby is asleep in our tacit mark, or worse. We reflect back like, dang, we could really use Cartathea's help now. I mean, she's the one who set Abby straight last time. Because we're both linked to Imperator's power, Rover is able to use sight beyond sight to sense where Cartathea is.
Sword of Omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Then we get a vision where we see snapshots of Cardi facing off against Lioness Arsinosa. And although at this time, Rover doesn't really know who Arsinosa is, so we decide to continue to trace Cartathea's steps through this valley. Afterwards, we sense Cartathea's frequency, and we're given an omniscient view of her off in some distant place. Cardi says that her traces will guide us there, and when the time comes, will bring this story to its rightful end. We're not really told if this is happening right now or if it's happening in the past, but we'll find all this out later. Nonetheless, we see Cardi is talking to herself, trying to find something or someone hiding in an incubator experimental unit. She searches for a way to make this structure collapse. As she's dismantling pieces of the mechanism, she notices that the more devices she destroys, the stronger the defenses become, until eventually she does it. The structure collapses, and a person emerges from the rubble. This person is unknown to us now, but it's someone who will later be revealed to us to be Mia, an ancient warrior of Septimon's past. And in an instant, Mia becomes Lupa. Then Lupa and Cartithea are at a standoff, as if they're about to do an epic battle. And then we're taken back to the rover's perspective, where we decide to head to a nearby village in search of more information. At the village, we stroll up next to some villagers who are having a conversation about gladiator fights. Eventually, they turn around and notice us standing there, menacingly. They notice that our clothes appear foreign and ask if we're from the New Federation. And we say, nah, our drip game is just like that. So anyway, the conversation steers towards gladiator matches. We're reminded of how this is the perfect time to visit Septimon because of the Great Aegon, Septimon's gladiatorial games, and they have just begun. We tell them that that's cool and all, but we're kind of looking for someone. And they respond that this village is the first stop for ferries to Capitoline Hill, which is Septimon's central city. So they might have seen her. So we asked them about Cartithea, but they say they haven't seen anyone like that. However, we're told that most Ragnanesi they see are from the Fool's Troop and the Montelli nobles. They say that they are more understanding of Septimontian views on faith. Getting no info on that front, we decide to ask them about the creature we saw Cardi fighting, Arsinosa. And it's from these villagers that we learn who Arsinosa actually is. She is the Lioness of Glory, Septimon's guardian echo, and some say she's been aiding the Septimontians as far back as their ancestors first set foot on the islands. Arsinosa was once just a griffin statue, but the people's burning desire for victory brought her to life. We learned that Arsinosa usually only reveals herself during the Great Aegon, and that to earn her blessing is the highest honor any Septimontian can hope for. So we think to ourselves, what would cause Cardi to take on Septimon's guardian echo? We analyze its frequency, revealing that it's similar to echoes in Raguna. Rover begins to question if it could have originated from Imperator's power as well. Like Abby said, we feel its frequency is also unstable, as if something else is interfering. We can sense that it's close to the city, but not exactly where. As we're deep in thought, suddenly,
Boss, you're looking so serious.
it's a traveling Taoist from Ming Zhou in Huanglong. Her name is Bu Ling, and it turns out she's an old friend of John Shen. They trained under the same master, which kind of doesn't tell us too much because we know that John Shen has had multiple masters, but anyway, John Shen is the one who told her about us. Before we can say a word, Bu Ling says, "So, I hear you're looking for someone." She continues saying the feng shui in Renacita is not good. There's ki trapped underwater, so we should be careful. She says she's glad that she caught us first. She says that when we show up, the stars change. Rover turns to look at her, and then she's gone. After that, we speak with some locals. We head to a nearby arena, and we somehow find ourselves in the middle of an ongoing skirmish. This is also where we first meet Lupa. Lupa defeats a guy who we find out is her former teammate from the House of Silva. She suspects this guy was put up to ambushing her by the house. The House of Silva is nobility in Septimon, and they often sponsor gladiator teams. We'll later learn just how significant the house is as the story goes on. But currently, Lupa is flat out disgusted with this guy she's beating up. She hates him for being involved in match fixing, and she surmises that they've already thrown her out of the House of Silva because she stepped away from the team. If you haven't guessed it yet, Lupa is a gladiator. She lives for the sport and is famous across the region. Lupa asks us to team up with her and to fight with her in the finals of the gladiator competition. During this exchange, we sense Carthathia's frequency emanating from her, so we ask about her. However, Lupa says she's never even heard of her, which is really sus, but we tell Lupa that Cardi is missing, and we last tracked her to Septimon. We recall our vision from earlier, where Cardi confronted Arsinosa. Lupa tells us that no one has ever faced Arsinosa directly, with the exception of the current Ephor, Augusta. Just when we realize that we've run out of leads, Lupa uses this to rope us into teaming up with her. She says that we should join her in the Aegon, because that's when Arsinosa shows up in the finals, and there we might just find the answers that we're looking for. By the way, Aegon just means battle, and they have tons of Aegons all across Septimon, all the time. But what Lupa is seeking out is victory in the Great Aegon, the championship competition of gladiating. It's not the money, not the fame. She wants to send a message to the Silvas and to see them punished for their match-fixing deeds. During Lupa's explanation, we start wondering what's really going on. Like, we know we sense Carthathia. So Rover starts to question whether Lupa met her and just didn't know it, or if she might be hiding something. Either way, there's really no other leads, so we agree to team up with her and go to register at the nearby reception desk. We register for the special qualifier to be eligible for the Great Aegon. Shortly after, we participate in our first Aegon, and we mop the floor with the opponents. After the match, supporters and fans swarm Lupa, and they shower her with questions and praise. Eventually, Lupa takes our hand and makes a mad dash to escape the crowd. On our way to the city, we bump into Kartur, Lupa's former manager. He tells her that he was sent because Domina Julia Silva was hoping she'd behave and be willing to return to the house. But Lupa has no interest in doing so. Kartur confirms that he's not involved in their match-fixing schemes. While Kartur represents the Silva's intentions here, he's not really a part of their faction. He just handled Lupa's dealings with them over the past couple of years. We finally reach Capitoline Hill and the Colosseum Olympus, where we begin our second Aegon with Lupa. After victory, we sense Carthathia's frequency again, and we get a vision of her standing on water. We notice that something is off, not just in relation to Cardi, but also in relation to all of Septimon. Rover says that he received an unusual sensation after striking his opponent's echo, and that he noticed that all the echoes here in Septimon seem to have some unstable frequency, but for some reason, no one else seems to notice. Speaking of notice, all the spectators notice that Lupa isn't with her old team anymore, and they can't stop whispering about the whats, the hows, and the how comes. We leave with Lupa during the chatter, because she's planning to take us someplace to get settled in before the semifinals. And then we ask if there's any large bodies of water nearby, because we're trying to find that place that we saw in that vision of Cardi just a moment ago. Lupa lets us know where we can go. It's a part of the city that has been abandoned for years. And just before we leave, we ask her why did she set all those people straight about all those rumors of match fixing that they were talking about. She lets us know a seemingly important part of Septimontian culture. She says that she didn't have enough time and enough evidence at the time, but most importantly, she tells us that in Septimon, only the winners get to speak their truth. So if you're a loser in Septimon, no one really wants to hear you speak. You'll probably just sound like a sore loser. And this adds a little bit more depth to the reason she wants to win the Great Aegon. As we head to the watery abandoned area of the city, we learn why it's abandoned. And that's because of the first dark tide in Reguna. They were concerned about the city's safety, so they relocated the main district of Capitoline Hill. We find the spot where we saw Carthathia in our vision, but she's nowhere to be found. We use sight beyond sight, but still no luck. So we maintain our faith that Arsinosa will lead us to new information after we win the Great Aegon. We resort to leaving the abandoned area, and as we do, Lupa says Carthathia is a name she's never heard before. but it feels strangely familiar. Suddenly, we get an omniscient view of Cardi wandering through the ruins of Capitoline City. Only now, the area isn't filled with water, and it's covered in tidal blight. Tidal blight are those blue coral-like structures. They're remnants of the dark tide's corruption, and they exist almost like scars on the land. Cartithea rushes to Lupa's aid, because here, Lupa is seen all beaten up and exhausted. She says that she's walked so far for so long, but she still can't leave the city. Cardi asks her name, but Lupa says she doesn't remember. Cardi introduces herself as Cartithea, the Wandering Knight. Tons of tacit discord stroll up, and they both prepare to squabble. In the very next shot, we're back in the city, and Lupa's all like, "Welcome to my city." And if you're like me, you're like, what the heck just happened? Was that the past? A premonition? Is Lupa deceiving us? Well, what's really going on is we're seeing an alternate reality. Remember when I said Cristofaro is super powerful? What's being shown to us is a reality that he's crafted in a script. And in that particular reality, Lupa is trapped in the city. We'll continue to get glimpses of Cristofaro's reality-bending power as the story goes on, throughout this act as well as in Act 6. Anyways, so Lupa realizes that we haven't had anything to eat after all this time, so she takes us to Solace Restaurant. The food comes and the waitress Fulvia says she just got a message that the batch of restored footage on contender Mia just arrived. So we ask, restored footage? Lupa explains that a lot of gladiators review footage of the matches of past champions to study and train from. She says that most people study F4 Augustus footage, but she prefers to watch contender Mia's footage over any of the past champions. We ask if she thinks we'll face her in this Aegon, and Lupa says that's not really likely. No one has seen Mia in years. She disappeared during the Great Aegon several years ago. There's a lot of rumors about her, but no one knows what happened to her for sure. After we leave Solace, Lupa takes us to Leonidas Hotel, and she sets us up in her lifetime suite, and she says we're welcome anytime we're in Septimon. Lupa absolutely loves being a gladiator and the thrill of battle, but that doesn't mean she isn't without worry. Here she confides in us and shares her fears and doubts as a warrior. We offer words of encouragement, and she thanks us, walks away, and prepares to rest up for tomorrow's battle. But just as she turns to walk away, she says goodnight, and for a brief moment, her presence is replaced by a Threnodian-possessed Mia, and Rover was shook. Like, what was that? So after all this, we decide to lay down and get some rest. The phonograph plays a foreign yet familiar melody, lulling us into a deep slumber. In our dreams, we see Frolova. She's floating and pages are swirling around her. Rover is ready to scrap, but she calmly tells us this is only an illusion, one of the night, one of dreams. This isn't like the spectacle we saw in the Carnival. She says that she isn't our foe, and that here, we can't harm one another. So she tells us to put away our blade. At least for now. Rover tells her to cut to the chase. We know you have something to do with Cartithea's disappearance, but she's like, nah, let's take our time with this one. No one will bother us here. She goes on to tell us all about her mysterious associate. Rover currently doesn't know who this is, but it will eventually be revealed to be Cristofaro. She hands us a book and says the future will occur as it is pinned in this script. She tells us to read it, and that the answers we seek lie within these pages. After that, she says something really interesting. She says,
if we continue to meet as foes, the symphony grows monotonous. I confess I find it rather uninspired.
Is this a hint that we'll eventually be on the same side? And for those who already finished both Act 5 and 6, do you think that's why she gave us this book in the first place? Do you think this is possibly something that Cristofaro doesn't know about? Frolova tells us that he, Cristofaro, believes that the closer one stands to the protagonist, the greater their influence over the tale. But the true lead of this story has yet to emerge. She tells us she gave us this so we can see the ending. Frolova tells us that Lupa will be the harbinger of the dark tide in Septimont, that this story will only last 3 days. When the final match concludes, so will this story. Frolova pitches a solution. She says that Rover could end it all and stop the dark tide by killing Lupa, and this will avert the tragedy. However, she says that if we make the wrong move, or worse, tell Lupa of what's going to happen, the consequences will spiral far beyond anything we can imagine. We asked Frolova, then what are we supposed to do? And why should we even trust her? And Frolova's basically like, hey man, do whatever you want. All I know is things are going to happen as my associate has it written. She says that this tale follows a template and even its creator cannot escape its confines. She says that she looks forward to our performance in this grand finale. She gives a smile of some unknown expectation, and then she bounces. One thing to take note of here is that this book continues to update throughout the quest with new images and stories to mark deviations in the story's timeline. So we wake up the next day to catch up with Lupa. Rover reasons that Frolova may not have told the whole truth, but there's no denying that something strange is going on in Septimont. And no one, not Lupa, not anyone else here, seems to notice. The next morning, we catch up with Lupa to face off against the House of Silva in the semifinals of the Great Aegon. We head to Coliseum Olimdos. Domina Julia Silva emerges. She's arrogant to the core and believes she's always right. Lupa is determined to prove to her that we don't need rigged matches to win. We'll win with pure strength. Augusta emerges to give the opening speech. Powerful, encouraging, and patriotic. It expresses that gladiatorial combat is the lifeblood of Septimontian culture. So the battle kicks off and we're laying into him. But suddenly, Lupa's weapon starts to act as if it has a mind of its own. It becomes enshrouded in this dark aura, and it turns against us, Rover. And Rover thinks to himself, saying, the frequency that's coming from her weapon is like that of the dark tide in the inverted tower. But despite that, the ground was squeaky clean, because we mopped the floor with him. After the battle, Lupa informs F4 Augusta that her weapon was tampered with by the House of Silva. However, Domina Julia denies accusation and basically tries to shame Lupa for leaving the house. Priestess Yuno emerges and tells Julia to stop the performance, calling her a jester. She leaps from the platform to confront her. She says that the Silvas are guilty and asks F4 Augusta to banish the Silvas from Septimont. The Jumbotron displays all the misdeeds of the Silvas on full display for all to see. The crowd chants guilty, guilty, and Augusta banishes the Silvas to leave Septimont to never return. There's some time before the other semifinal battle concludes, so we head to the lounge to chill. And who do we find there? Back turned, staring at the wall with a cunning smirk. It's Kartur, Lupa's former manager. He's just standing there, waiting to turn around on us. He saw what happened to the Silvas, and he wants no part of that. He wants to continue managing Lupa in exchange for cleaning up her image from having left the House of Silva and breaking her contract. Lupa says it's a deal. She knows that money isn't really an issue for him and essentially asks, why did he come back to her? And he's basically like, he doesn't want smoke with F4 Augusta, but he doesn't further elaborate. While hanging with Lupa in the lounge, we start reflecting back on the strange frequency from before, the one we sensed during the Aegon. It was similar to the Thenodians. And Rover starts to question, is what Frolova said actually true? Will Lupa bring forth the dark tide in Septimont? So we ask to see her spear, but we're unable to sense that frequency anymore. We ask about Julia Silva's belief in the Sentinel, and Lupa says it's highly unlikely. After the battle, Lupa is tired and she falls asleep on our shoulder. After a short while, the other two teams wrap up their match, freeing us up to finally leave the arena and get some proper rest. Just as we get prepared to leave, we're swarmed with journalists and supporters. So Lupa holds their attention so we can leave in peace. So we decide to find a quiet place to ponder the whole situation. Holding the script from Frolova, we reflect back on the battle. The aura emanating from Lupa's weapon was indeed the Thenodian's frequency, but Lupa thought it was just a dirty trick perpetrated by the Silvas. Frolova said her associate can weave fate and stories, and if that's true, it means that Cristofaro's forte can influence how things play out, but it's unlikely he can bend the fabric of reality. Rover says that the Fraxidus would have overrun Solaris long ago if he could do that, and he supposes one of two things. Either Septimont exists outside of reality, or his ability has limits. He says that if this isn't the real world, he could take more drastic measures, like killing Lupa. But if that's not the case, it will be an act he can never take back. So he decides to stick with the original plan, which is to wait for Arsinosa to appear in the Great Aegon finals, and have that be our lead to Cardathea. We recall sensing Cardathea's frequency earlier, so we believe she's likely making moves just like us to fight against whatever the Fraxidus is planning with the Dark Tide and the Thenodian. During our deep contemplation, randomly, Wuthering pops out. She says that she also senses the oddities and says Septimont is caught in some anomaly, but she also senses we're the ones to break the deadlock. She says that as a Taoist, she can't say too much, but helping us is helping her. So she hands us this mysterious copper mirror and tells us that the truth exists in the mirror of the world. We use the copper mirror and see two Septimonians of the past discussing Mia. After this, we look around and Wuthering is gone. But the bell attached to the copper mirror leads us to other areas where more revelations about Mia are revealed. We discover that, for some reason, Mia has been struggling. She's been crying and suffering from bouts of hysteria, hallucinating, the whole nine in terms of mental disorders and anguish. We find out that despite knowing her poor condition, seemingly everyone sought to profit from her condition. And in the final revelation given to us, Mia says she loves gladiating, but she can't stop sobbing and trembling as she thinks about it all. After this mirror vision concludes, Rover says that he senses the Thenodian. Lupa walks up, and just as before, she briefly transforms into a Thenodian-possessed Mia. After this, we get another omniscient view of Cardathea caring for Lupa, as she lay beaten and exhausted. At this point, Cardi has been looking after Lupa for days. Lupa says she's afraid because the tidal blight is spreading faster. Cardi recognizes that this anomaly stems from a specific power. She says that some facilities and records have been rewound almost 20 years, but she doesn't know why or who is responsible. Of course, we, the player, know this to be kicked off by the work of Cristofaro. Lupa says that a mastermind like this would be tricky to deal with, but Cardi is like, nah, this will be much easier than dealing with an unseen, barely tangible entity that constantly whispers to you. In the face of Lupa's doubt and despair, Cardi expresses that she has full faith that we, the rover, will figure this all out. Even here in this anomalous realm, Lupa's presence flickers in and out to reveal Mia. After this anomalous scene, we're back in the hotel with Lupa, and she starts telling us about Mia. She says that she first heard about Mia from Domina Julia. Julia hated Mia, probably because they competed in the same Aegon. Mia disappeared after claiming the title, leaving that Aegon without an official champion. Mia was known for her rigorous training outside of the arena. For some reason, people didn't like this and started tons of rumors about Mia concerning match fixing and desertion because of the pressure. Strangely, Lupa doesn't blame Mia one bit, whether the rumors are true or not, signifying just how in tune she is with Mia's character. After this, we sip on some heart pour and fall asleep. The day of the Great Aegon's finals come, and we arrive at Coliseum Olimdos. Arsinosa emerges. Rover thinks to himself, this Arsinosa is different from the one we saw confronting Cardathea. And this event reminds Lupa about some details about Mia. She says that Mia competed in the Bloody Aegon decades ago. She disappeared on her way to receiving the award, but she did claim the title of the Bloody Aegon and even received Arsinosa's blessing. We ask about the name Bloody Aegon, and Lupa tells us that the current 2-on-2 matchups were only introduced thanks to Augusta and her predecessor. Before then, the matches were much more brutal, hence the name. During those days, it was a massive free-for-all between all the competitors, and they released tacit discords into the arena, and the last gladiator standing was crowned the victor. Soon enough, the battle commences, and during the battle, Rover says he feels that same tangled colliding sensation again. And soon we find out why the real world and the anomalous reality of the bloody Aegon overlaps. But for some reason, Cardathia's frequency is getting stronger. Suddenly, we hear her voice. She says, "I knew you'd end up here, just as he once came to me," referring to Rover, filling that dark tower with light. He has already given us salvation, and now, though we stand apart, we still fight together. And then we see Cardathia battle Arsinosa, which also overlaps with our battle. Cardathia speaks to us saying she'll be waiting for us at the end of the story. Rover is taken aback by everything he's seen. He even asks Lupa, "How do we win?" He realizes that the real world is being overlapped. Augusta, Yuno, and Arsinosa all come forward to congratulate us, presenting us with a medal. This medal was once a single piece given to the winner of the bloody Aegon, but she cleaved it in two, symbolizing the importance of working together as a team. She says that fighting alone is commendable. However, true strength lies in protecting those beside you. Then we receive Arsinosa's blessing. At the end of the celebration, Arsinosa, Yuno, and Augusta all stand before us. The crowd is cheering. Confetti is falling from the sky. And then the sky darkens and everything slows down. Arsinosa's weapon falls, revealing Cardathia in a seemingly empty arena. That is, until you hear Cristofaro clapping from the stands. She says, "You plotted this tragedy." And Cristofaro replies, "No, madame. I wouldn't take all the credit. The architects of this tragedy were the Septimontians themselves, with blood on every hand, who's left to point a finger." He's surprised that she would even go through this for strangers in lands she's never set foot in. Cardathia says she doesn't need a grand reason to slay a villain like him. The Thernotian once tried to pull the entirety of Renacita into the Dark Tide, but it failed, and so will you. Cristofaro says, "You can't do this alone," and Cardi basically says, "I won't have to, because he, the Rover, will find a way to finish this, and that she will make his so-called perfect play spiral out of control."
Silent, hollow words. The dark tide engulfing the city of glory. All shall be swept away by the winds at the story's end.
And that's pretty much the story of Chapter 2, Act 5. Man, Act 5 really sets up so many unanswered questions to be later explained in Act 6. Now, I already went over some of them here and kind of linked some things up that we've gotten in Act 6 to be able to make this make even more sense. Because I know when I finished Act 5, I was a bit confused as to what everything meant. But Act 6 really puts things in perspective. And y'all already know, I like to combine the acts whenever I can. And I wanted to this time as well, but I just wasn't able to do it for you guys this time. But whenever I do release my Act 6 video, I hope to see you there. That one might take a different form than usual, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see something similar to Act 4 Part 1, we'll have to wait and see. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, please consider joining the channel and don't forget to hit that like button. Anyways, thanks for watching. That is all I have for you today. And until next time, I'll catch you in the waves. Peace.